Oh no no, oh no no, it's another episode of the law offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. You've entered the law offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker.
You've just entered the law offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. If you've come for actual legal advice, you need to turn right around, honey. You need to get out of here, 'cause you ain't gonna get none of that. They quibble, and they squabble, and they bicker. But if you want to hear meaningless opinions, this is the right place. They got plenty of that. Stuff that makes no sense at all. They go off on tangents. It's crazy talk. If that's your thing, keep listening. They'll keep talking.
Dateline, November 18th. You're listening to the law offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker.
I
We
hear
are not
squabbling
real
in the
lawyers,
background, actually.
but we like to confer with clients, even though we're not real lawyers. Today's topic, sitcoms on trial.
So it's our client, you mean?
Yes. Oops. See, I told you I'd screw it up.
You did it very professionally, Greg, until I
So Matt,
interrupted
Matt
you.
reeled this client in, and I think it was specifically is what shows from our childhoods wouldn't fly today, if you will. Wouldn't be kosher.
I don't even know if it needs to be from our childhood. It could be from any point in time that we've watched stuff on TV. It could even be current shows, which really shouldn't be on the air if you want to do that.
Even now.
That's right. You know? But you guys have one like in mind that has been sitting in your head that would be like the least appropriate one for the day and age?
Amos and Andy?
Yeah, I'd say that one. Probably Jack Benny show. I think a combination of
Yeah.
the two. May
Probably,
throw Honeymooners in there for the Me Too movement.
yes, because he would always threaten his wife with physical violence.
Yes, it's true.
And it was played
Uh,
off for laughs.
right, and they also and it was always him demanding like her acting the regular housewife role. Did you notice in that show they only had like 2 rooms that they would ever show, but mostly it was just one. It was just like the kitchen with the table in the room, and then a door would open to another room or to the hallway. But
I
that
don't
was
even
like the
remember
extent
seeing
of
another
this.
room.
That was like the extent of the set.
I never remember seeing any other room in that show. I didn't
He
see all the episodes,
on
I
one
guess.
episode he did go out of his window to hide to catch the wife. He thought she was cheating on him, and instead she was, setting some situation up so they could have a comedy about it. For those of you out there who don't know what sitcom stands for, you're obviously a moron. But if you don't know, I'll help you be less moronic and explain that sitcom is short for situation comedy. In other words, you have a comedy that is created based upon some situation that occurs within the show, and then things get funny. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha
Like,
ha.
for example, a
Yes.
situation happened where Fonzie had to jump over some sharks. That was the situation.
A
And
situation?
then it's a situation. And then hijinks ensued and laughter. So
Maybe you
comedy
should
ensued
explain
from
to
the
people what a
situation.
Fonzie is. It's not like some disease you get like as a rash on your kneecap or something.
If they don't know, they're morons. Everyone should know Fonzie is.
Okay.
Google it.
Well, tell them that's the point here. Would jumping over a shark not be relevant today
It never was relevant.
or
But I
relevant?
think there might be parents groups because that show was geared for children. A lot of kids liked Happy Days. I think a lot of parents would be like, this is a bad lesson for kids who might try to duplicate this. Helicopter parents, if you will.
So would Happy Days be a show that would be appropriate for today? Because it's based
Probably.
in the 50s, right, or the early 60s?
Yeah.
I guess more like the 60s.
They never talked about anything that controversial or anything or that would make people angry or it's very lighthearted.
Yeah.
Oh, Fonzie was kind of just this total Lothario. A lot
Uh-huh.
of people would be like, yeah, he's just all he does is treat women like meat. Every woman was just someone to fuck to him.
Well, what kind of meat was it like beef or lamb or is it more of fish, like a
It
cod
depends on the
or
woman,
a
I guess.
or a haddock,
It
possibly?
depends on the woman.
Yeah. What kind of
Yeah.
meat should be treated? I mean,
But
say
he treated
treat
them
it.
all.
Some people treat meat really well, so I'm not sure I understand your point there about treating like a piece of meat.
Well, yeah, you do know what I'm talking about.
I don't, Greg. I want you to be more
Yeah,
specific
he
on your
basically
cliche. Like
he
make
never
it.
loved the girls. He just fucked girls and then moved on to the next girl. They weren't like, oh, I'm in love with her. Later on, I think he fell in love in the last season.
Do we know that he actually had sex with them?
It was implied.
It was implied, so we don't really know. It could be that he would go out with them and they would just play checkers or something.
And play miniature golf. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed. Are we talking about Fonzie? There is a raging debate at the downstairs dining room table about something to do with Europe. I'm not really sure. A couple of our louder girls probably would have heard them if I hadn't been on mute.
Could we invite them into the
Well,
show?
I hear them and I hear the dog, and they're all kind of part of the show right now.
The dog is not making any noise. That is just people.
That was a child barking.
The dog is locked far away on the other side of the house. If you hear the dog, you have a superpower.
I have a stupor power.
A
Yes.
superpower.
Yes, you do.
I have the power to put people in a stupor from my inane ramblings. Yeah, Greg brought up Fonzie from Happy Days to talk about how Fonzie is treating women like pieces of lamb or haddock or some other type of meat.
I think Fonzie's pretty benign as far as that goes.
But don't you think people today would be like, he never has a close relationship with women. He just basically is a man slut, a man whore.
Yeah, but is that any worse than the show, what was it, 2.5 Men, the one with Charlie Sheen and
Right.
Cryer?
That was way worse.
Yeah, that's like the ultimate in misogyny compared to Fonzie, who had like this special power we could turn on a jukebox by snapping his fingers or something.
He was kind of like a wizard.
It really sounds like Brendan is having a major party.
Hey, guys,
Yeah.
I'm going to put a pin in this for a second. Brendan, can you stay up late tonight? Do you want to wait another half hour? Or they'll still be there?
They were
If you
supposed
can
to
stay up late.
I can stay up late. They were supposed to be gone like 45 minutes ago. So if you guys want to pause it for another 15, I stay up late anyway, and it's like not even nighttime for you guys. So
Yeah, I wouldn't mind.
Well, maybe it would be worth checking to see when they might be. I mean, if Holly might have a clue and when she thinks they'll be gone.
well, they can't be here too much longer. I mean, it's 8:15 right now.
You never know with 12-year-olds.
They have
could
school.
be going out and they could have online school tomorrow.
This is Florida. They have school.
Oh, school. So Florida has like 4th in the nation of cases right now, and the kids are going to school.
They
Absolutely.
got germ school.
This is COVID school, kids.
They're learning all about biology.
Nah, let's just work through it. I mean, if anybody really cares about the yelling in the background, you know what? If there are any listeners and you get an issue with this, communicate something so I know you're there. Otherwise, I'm not going to care that we have external noise. Last 2 episodes, I stopped editing the sound out of it, and I didn't care anymore. So
Good.
until
That's
I know
liberating.
somebody's actually listening, I will. In terms of who will actually engage with us in some way and respond either by email or by sending something on Twitter or by leaving a message on our website. By the way, everybody, it is qsblaw.org. If you want to go to our website, you can leave a voice message there. If you have a microphone on your laptop, if you have a laptop, or on your phone, whatever you want to do, leave us a voice message. Prove that you exist. Let us know that in some way. Otherwise, I'll let all sorts of errors and external noises pop up on this. I'll let Greg do all of his normal noises, gulping from his drinks and burping. Unless somebody finally engages with the podcast and lets them know you exist. So if you like that, well, then I guess it'll stay in. Anyway, so let's get back to Fonzie having sex with pieces of fish and lamb and occasional ground beef and whatever else we were
That's the
talking about.
euphemism you want to use, fine. But I think some people would say he's not a good role model for kids.
Because he was a motorcyclist.
He was a Lothario.
Yeah, but how much of a Lothario, really?
He was. He was fucking those girls. They just couldn't show it on network TV. The censors wouldn't allow it, but it was implied.
Right, but so this being the case, compared to like the example I mentioned before, Two and a Half Men, it's very, very tame.
But is that show geared to like 10-year-olds? Like Happy Days' main demographic, I think, was kids. Kids love that show. There was a cartoon on Saturday mornings about Fonzie even. They knew that kids liked Fonzie.
I don't think it was geared toward kids because most of the shows back then were geared towards everybody.
Yeah, but that show really took on with kids. Like, kids loved Fonzie. I mean, it was just like he took over the show.
When you say kids love Fonzie, are you saying that you loved Fonzie? Is
I
that
did.
really what we're talking about
I
here?
thought he was cool as hell. I thought
So
he
you're
was the ideal
speaking
man.
for all people who watched the show and
Every
saying that it was
kid I
geared for
knew.
kids because it was all about you.
We thought he was awesome. We thought he was the best man who ever lived, and we wanted to grow up to be him.
For what it's worth, I hated the show. I hate everything about the 50s. I don't know what it is about the 50s for me. I don't like the whole grooving all week with you and bebop and little poodle skirts. Some people get totally into it like a religion. Elvis, that time of music just makes my skin crawl. So I was never a Happy Days person. I was more a Sanford and Son.
I wasn't smart enough to get Sanford and Son. I didn't appreciate it at the time, but now I do.
What was there to get in Sanford and Son?
I don't know. It was just
it's a guy with a son and a dead wife that he would occasionally call out to because he thought he was having a heart attack.
Right.
Yeah. It was just something weird about seeing some cranky old man berate his son all the time. Like that, as a little boy, I thought that was weird. I was just like, this isn't funny. I don't like it.
Now, would that be a politically incorrect show to have on now?
I think so. I mean, there was a lot of the Jeffersons, Sanford and Son, Good Times, all in the Family. I was just thinking of the ones that really kind of catered to the black community. There were some. I don't know. I don't know that people would appreciate those shows now, or maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe it would be this empowerment thing, and Good Times is coming back.
I know that I watched all those shows when I was growing up because in a lot of the cases there wasn't a lot of other options to watch, but I thought they were funny. I remember, what's his name? Jimmy from Good Times, who would do the saying Dynamite, and that's where Janet Jackson got her start, was on that TV show, as a Ute. And,
I never thought that Happy Days was funny, though, just by the way. I never laughed at it. It was just I'd watch it like a soap opera, almost like, ooh, it's going to happen to Richie this week. What's Fonzie going to do?
Well, the laugh track helped, didn't it? Didn't it tell you when you were supposed to laugh?
Yeah, but I didn't feel like laughing. I said, oh, why are they laughing? That wasn't very funny.
That's not funny.
I think it got really bad is when they actually brought Mork from Ork onto the show.
That was
where
great.
It suddenly went out of the realm of an actual home in Middle America to a home visited by aliens in Middle America, which kind of took it even further out of the realm of reality, let alone, a positive role model household that doesn't really exist anywhere because everybody's broken.
The show, Mork and Mindy, had an interspecies romance. That's not cool. That's against the laws of God. An alien having sex with a Earth woman.
Well, did that happen? Oh, that's right. They had a kid, didn't they? Didn't they have a kid? The kid was Jonathan Winters, right?
Yeah, and he aged backwards.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, if anybody was going to be a good foil for Robin Williams on a show, it'd be Jonathan Winters.
Yeah.
Jonathan Winters. Robin Williams may have been nuts, but Jonathan Winters was crazy.
Yeah.
That shit.
But, incredibly hilarious almost every time he talked. So I guess that works in your favor sometimes. But I think that, we brought up All in the Family. Now, All in the Family wouldn't necessarily fly now in terms of some of the content, but it was a groundbreaking show because it was dealing with these racial issues that were going on in the late 60s and early 70s in kind of a real way where, I think, what was it? Archie Bunker was like a forklift operator or something. Wasn't that his job?
Like that. It was some blue collar. I don't recall, but yeah.
Yeah. And then, and then his wife was constantly abused by him, as was his daughter and his son-in-law. Son-in-law, for those who don't know from the show, is Rob Reiner, who went on to have one of the best directing careers of any director out there. But
I'll always be Meathead to me.
He'll be Meathead to you? But what about let's say a show like Welcome Back, Kotter?
Oh,
I don't know if you remember that one. That's
oh,
very.
I loved that show.
All right,
Me
so,
too.
so that one appealed to you more than Happy Days, obviously, because it didn't have to do with the 50s. Yeah, I mean, because it was a little grittier. You know, you're dealing with lower
It was,
class kids, I suppose, who were going to a school where it was somewhere in New York City, I think, was it?
yeah, it was
Mhm.
something that I could relate to. I couldn't relate to the nuclear family and mom and dad and Happy Richie and all that shit. I just wanted to punch everybody in the face.
That would have been a different show.
I want to
That would have
build
been
a
a
time
different show.
machine. For your birthday, I'm going to send you back to the 50s just so you can punch everyone in the face.
Oh, I would
Have a great
I would,
birthday.
I would get up early and I would go long.
Yeah, but the cops weren't as nice then as they are now.
Oh, they're
No,
really
no.
nice now, too.
They would have had a different point of view of how to deal with a young buck like yourself.
Yeah,
I
Back
take
in
my
the 50s.
chances with a 50s cop.
me
He's
too.
not
They
outfitted
don't
with
have tanks.
Kevlar and and a body armor and a machine gun.
Yeah, they just would get all their buddies together to get you after hours. That's all. Take out you, take out your family, take out your block.
Take over the county line.
Yes, exactly. Where you'll
But-
never be
but-
seen again.
But I'm Irish, so that might be an advantage to me because most
Oh
of them
yeah,
are Irish.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Only the Irish were hired to work as police officers in the 50s. I don't think
Right.
they allowed anybody of any other nationality.
Nope.
No,
No,
they said
just
no.
They're
Irish
all
people.
sewn
So
up.
you're Polish? Forget it. I know. You're just gonna have to go make sausages.
There's no Walenza. Officer Walenza is not happening, but Officer McDougal, yes.
Isn't Mick or O? Which is more associated with the Irish? Isn't it? Aren't the Micks more? I guess Mick was the pejorative for Irish people, right? So
It
I guess
is.
it'd be like the O'Connors would be more Scottish than Irish, or is it just
No,
a
O is-
combination of both?
It's the opposite. The O's are more commonly associated with Irish. Mix can be both Scottish and Irish.
Oh, but the pejorative is strictly for Irish for
Irish
whatever
people.
reason.
Would you
Oh,
guys
that's
stop
interesting.
saying the M word, please?
Monster,
You just said it. Before
Moulin,
I'm not going to repeat it.
Monkey Boy.
Moulin
Moulin Rouge.
Rouge.
I will stop saying that M word. Yes, I will no
I'm
longer
kidding.
say marmalade.
Lady Marmalade, please don't.
I said I wouldn't
Unless
say
you
it.
sing it.
You can sing it if you want, Greg. Go ahead. I think you
I'm
should take the
not gonna
first.
do
Take
that.
the first verse. Brendan will take the second for Lady
Hey,
Marmalade.
sister, go, sister, go, sister, go, sister. Hey, sister, go, sister.
There it
Another
is.
song.
I'm glad you remembered it, Greg, because I couldn't remember how it began. So I'm glad
Yeah.
you took that part. Anyway, so
So Welcome Back, Kotter was a great show.
it had sweat hogs.
They had the Sweat Hogs, kind of a gang, I guess, of sorts.
Well, it was just the students in the class were called sweat hogs, and
Yeah,
it
they're the
actually makes
losers.
you wonder, where did that name come from? Did they ever talk about that in the show, like where
I
they
don't
got
think
the
There was a
names?
legacy. Cotter was a sweat hog when he was a student, and Mr. Woodman was his teacher. It was a tradition in that school that the losers were called the sweat hogs, the kids that were just, fuck
Huh.
them, they're lost cases.
Yeah, but where did the name itself
Oh,
originate
I
from?
think they made it up. Yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
that's
but
a
isn't
common
it's kind of an
historical-
odd? Well, obviously it's made up for the show,
Yeah,
but if you're going to go into like a history of something, how do you think that could have originated? The term "sweat hog," like a hog that's sweaty, and that it's attributed to
And they're
these
filthy.
kids.
They're
they're
filthy,
dirty, poor
little
kids.
They're
poor kids.
dirty, but they're sweaty. So they're
Yeah.
sweaty and
Yeah.
dirty, but then it's this term of pride that they have is that they are sweat hogs.
Yeah, they're the
Yeah,
lovable
that's-
losers.
That's how they usually do. They take the pejorative word
The sweaty
And-
pigs.
or like the N word, and then they make it a self-affirmation of, yeah, we're
I don't know if
that.
they ever did
Yeah.
that with the N word on a sitcom, and it's probably for the best that they.
Chappelle Show.
Was that
Yeah, on cable,
really? That's
on
more of a
cable.
variety show than a sitcom.
It's true. But I'm just saying,
They
you
had
know,
sketches.
he dropped that every day.
He
Did
did.
Archie Bunker ever say it? Ever say that word, or he always said like spear chuckers or other bad words?
Jungle
He never
Bunny.
used the N word.
I don't think he ever used the N word.
You guys are wonderful in pulling out those to educate our youth. Anyway,
Well, that's a colorful term.
here, let's give you another one. Tell them the one about sitting on porches too. That'd be fun.
Hey, I grew
Anyway,
up in the 70s.
Was
I got
was
lots,
Blue
there's a lot
Gums
of them.
one? Was that one, Greg? Blue Gums?
Blue Gums.
Maybe that was just
Heard that
maybe that
one.
was just my neighborhood.
Blue Gums. It's blue hair.
No, that's the old ladies.
Yeah, well, they're pretty bad. Old ladies. Can't
Yeah.
really trust them. If you ever watch any Monty Python episodes, you can tell the old ladies could come after you at any point.
Yeah, I'd like to come back to Amos and Andy, if that's all right.
Would
And,
you? Would you like to go back to Amos and Andy, Greg?
I was just because first of all, if you guys ever seen Amos and Andy, it's fucking hilarious. The Kingfish is one of the funniest characters ever. But I get why that show was canceled back in the 60s and 70s, the repeats, even before there was a thing about getting rid of shows because they were culturally insensitive. But that show really irked people. But I remember seeing this documentary in the 80s. A lot of prominent black activists were saying the amazing thing about Amos and Andy, if you watch the show, is everyone on it was black because they wanted it segregated. They didn't want some white people popping up. So the judge was black when they had to see a judge. All the cops are black. When they go to see a lawyer, they're black. There was no black judges in New York City, I'm pretty sure, in the 50s. So did these black activists, and I'm sorry, not activists, but scholars, were saying it was really important for black people to see themselves on TV for once or in film. They're not just the maid, they're everything. Hey, I could be a judge when I grow up because it's on Amos and Andy. Look, there's a black judge. There's black cops. Chief of police is black. So even though it does have those stereotype, minstrel type roles, they did say it was very powerful for young black people to see that show because they were invisible on TV. There's no black people on TV unless they were domestics.
Well, it's understandable. I was just watching a documentary on Jesse Owens earlier today, who was the multiple gold winner. The multiple gold medal. Gold medal winner in Nazi Germany as an African American, and they interviewed some people who were also gold medal winners in the Olympics who looked to him as their role model. Like he and Joe Louis were like the only ones in popular culture, at least as athletes, that they could look up to, because at the time there were no black people in baseball or in football.
Now look at it.
Yeah, now they're win.
Mm.
They've taken everything over except for hockey, and good for them. I really wish they'd take over hockey too. I would love to see that.
They even took over
golf and tennis too. Back when with Venus and Serena, but Arthur Ashe had come in and tennis went away. But it's not really taking over. It's just they were given more opportunities to be able to shine where they didn't necessarily have that opportunity before. I think that's why there's more Hispanic people boxing these days, because there's more of them in harder situations coming into our country, and trying to make something of their lives. Whereas it used to be more of an African American sport, because of the fact that their communities tend to be lower income, and they had to find ways to get out of there. But anyway, I was making a point regarding Jesse Owens, and you bring up Amos and Andy. So yeah, I think back in that period of time, there's a lot of people who would like to see more of themselves in better roles. Even women would have liked to see themselves in like executive roles, to use that as a way to bolster themselves up so they don't have to feel like they could just be housewives.
Yeah. The irony, though, is that the racism of the time was what dictated this fantasy they were showing, because they could have had a white judge, but that's how racist people were. Like, it's a black show. We don't want them intermingling with white people. People would get really pissed at that. As long as they're off in their own little city where no one's white, we can deal with it. But it did give a positive message to lots of the only message on TV.
But if it was airing now, you're saying it would be looked upon as a minstrel show?
Well, it was. There's other things. It's not like Jesse Owens, who's just an inspirational story. There was the over-the-top, like the accents, which doesn't play well now. Just like the Italian guy. If I can do the accents, I'm Italian.
Greg doesn't play well now either.
If there was an Italian character now in a sitcom, it was like, hey, I'm Mr. Bracci, I'm making you a spicy meatball. People would get annoyed. They'd be like, that's kind of a...
I don't know they would get that annoyed, because they've been shutting down Italian stuff left and right, culturally. They're taking away Columbus Day, and, I know Italians aren't happy about that.
Well, he was a mass murderer. I agree. And as an Italian, I don't mind. There's no Columbus Day.
So
Not
should we
really a man
change
to
the name of
celebrate.
everything that has the name Columbus in it, like District of Columbia? Should that be changed to something else? The Columbia River?
Why
Should we
not?
change that too? What should you change it to? MLK River?
The Greg Pettix River?
Do you think anything would be named after you, Greg,
No.
other than the cup in your hand? I
cup
call this a
in your
Pettix.
hand.
It's like
So-
anything can be named after something. You should name all of your utensils after
So
you.
I think that that's what Greg is saying isn't totally true. I still think they lampoon the hell out of white stereotypes or whitish ethnic stereotypes, Italians, Irish people. I don't think that's, they haven't gotten rid of the Fighting Irish, that little drunk leprechaun motherfucker. Lucky Charms is still running around. If that was a black guy, would we be eating that cereal? No. So I don't know. I don't think.
It depends on how good the cereal is.
What would the marshmallows be? That's what I want to know.
They would probably be chocolate chips.
Chocolate chips.
Be careful. Watch where you're going here, Matt.
I didn't go anywhere. He was just in.
Well, it's interesting in the shows that we were talking about, like the Jeffersons and, Good Times, how dumb the white people were in those shows. How absolutely just stereotypically stupid white people they were.
I think that's in pretty much every sitcom that has white people. They're all pretty damn stupid, which is why sitcoms are on trial today. It's because everybody's pretty much in most of these shows where there are entirely white people. Like Three's Company was a show that certainly had its share of idiots that were the main characters.
Oh, that show was terrible.
Right. However, you could look at that as a groundbreaking show for gay people at the time. It wasn't like the lead character was gay, but he was pretending to be gay so he could live with the two women and get a better rent on his apartment.
Bosom buddies. Would bosom buddies be allowed today because those two guys were pretending to be gay? So
were they pretending to be gay or were they pretending to be women?
Women.
No, they were trans. That's right. They were pretending to be women.
Yeah, but they weren't trans. They weren't pretending to be. They weren't saying they were trans.
I'm just saying, if that show was on television today, do you think it'd be a problem?
I don't know. I mean, I had a problem when it came on because I just thought it was one of the stupidest shows that was there. The fact that nobody could tell that they weren't women was me going, "What's wrong with you people?"
I don't know. Tom Hanks is kind of sexy.
As a man.
As a girl.
It's a girl.
Yeah, Peter Scolari looked good.
I'm surprised you still remember that actor's name.
I do, but I watched it for Donna Dixon. She was the hottest woman on TV, I thought. As a kid, I was like so in love with her.
It's interesting how many people who came from sitcoms wound up being incredibly famous, and then there are others who just disappeared completely, where you thought they would become famous. In other words, their show was really popular, and it seemed like they should have like some big movie career, and it didn't happen. But then other people did wind up having these big careers, and you go, why'd that guy get it and not this guy over here? Like the guy in Welcome Back, Kotter, Gabe Kaplan. Whatever happened to him? He did that show. It was a really popular show. John Travolta came out of it the star, but he was the only one of the Sweat Hogs who did. And
they gave Gabe Kaplan a movie. He had a movie and it failed miserably.
Right. I don't know. But what I'm saying is that his career didn't go the way you thought it would go.
He wasn't that good. He wasn't that talented. He was a hack. Because so many sitcoms are insipid. I'm sorry. He was never funny. He was even as a kid.
He was a straight man to the kids. And John Travolta lucked out and got Saturday Night Fever because he was basically being the character from the show almost.
Well, I thought he got Saturday Night Fever after doing Carrie, though.
Did he do Carrie first?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he did Carrie before he was in
Carrie
Welcome Back,
didn't
Kotter.
make him a superstar, though. Carrie, he was just like, hey, he did pretty good. And
Definitely didn't make him a superstar.
Yeah.
It made him known to people. And then The Boy in the Plastic Bubble, the TV movie that he did. I think that was before it was also. So I think those things were like building his career to then he did Saturday Night Fever. But I had an issue with Travolta for probably 20 years where I just couldn't see him other than as Vinnie Barbarino from Welcome Back, Kotter. And I could never see him in any other. I was like, he's always playing this character no matter what he was doing. I think it wasn't until Pulp Fiction I was finally able to separate him from that role. Where it's like, okay, I can see he can act now.
Saturday Night Fever. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen it in the past 30 years. He really is like deserved to be a star. Like he is so good at dancing, the charisma he exudes. He's a star in that movie. He's really pretty impressive.
Well,
I
I know,
didn't think
even
of him.
even if you don't like the guy, and even if you don't like a lot of his movies, the fact that he's had still a career with so many movies that have tanked, because
Yeah.
he's done lots of crappy movies. The fact that people still know who he is really a testament to the guy's talent. That he's been able
Right.
to last this long. And I think Tom Selleck would be like a similar one. Like you'd go, how did he wind up getting a big career coming out of Magnum PI? But he didn't become a huge movie star. But he did get leading roles in some movies that were okay.
Really?
But he didn't
I
disappear.
don't remember one. It seemed like he bombed every movie bombed that he was in. But
he was in 3 Men and a Baby, and those were
that was
popular movies.
a classic piece of cinema. Three Men and a Baby.
Well, I'm just saying
well,
it was a really popular movie. Is what I'm saying. It didn't bomb. I'm not saying
the one with the baby talks and Christy Alley was in it.
No, that was the John Travolta one.
Oh,
that's even worse.
that was
Look Who's Talking.
Right, and then its sequels. That wasn't bad, but then the sequels were like horrible. It's horrible.
But the Baby Geniuses is the one that's the worst. You ever see Baby Geniuses? That is a repulsive film. CGI babies doing things that they shouldn't be doing and dancing.
Like mathematics. Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
babies shouldn't be doing mathematics. But
I don't want them doing funky dances.
But like what other, if you can remember going back, like what other characters that came out of sitcoms became hugely popular?
A handful.
What's his name? Fox.
Jamie Foxx.
Not Jamie Foxx, although him too, but Michael J. Fox.
Oh, yeah. Well, unfortunately, he had a disease that killed his career, which is sad.
But what I'm saying, he was in Family Ties.
Right.
And then he bounced out of that and did a bunch of stuff before.
Yeah, imagine if they'd made Family Ties now with him being the conservative. Like, how pro-Trump do you think he would be?
Ooh, interesting.
It's like, would he have really destroyed his family in that case?
Be a full MAGA.
You know what's interesting? I think we need a show like that.
Oh, I'm sure we're going to get one.
Maybe with, conservative parents and a liberal kid or vice versa. Probably more interesting to have liberal parents like that one and a conservative kid and have them, a very special episode. The election.
A very special episode for very special people.
Don't you remember those? A very special episode?
Oh, yes.
For the after-school specials?
No, it'd be like, they do the different strokes thing, but then they'd have the guy that wanted to take pictures of the little boys in the back. And they would start it off by going, tonight's a very special episode. And I'd always be like, oh, good, we're going to get something nasty.
Yeah, something juicy.
Something's going on. Somebody's going to drug out.
Something controversial is going to go on this show. Right, because Different Strokes was definitely a sitcom. And then they brought in that really heavy episode dealing with the kid toucher.
Ooh, yeah.
It's like, how do you handle those things delicately,
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting how the media has, or at least the writers for these shows, have found ways to put certain topics into society to get people talking about it. And was it deliberate for a purpose to change society in some way? Like, have we all been manipulated by sitcoms in some way to change our points of view about things? Or is it done outside of the entertainment realm, strictly through the news? I think more people trust the sitcoms to give you something lighthearted, but then makes concepts a little more palatable than if it's the news where everything's just so serious and you try to reject that information.
I was listening to continue.
I was going to say, if you remember back when we were kids, the news was on between 6 and 7, and that was fucking it. So, in terms of bombarding your mind with thoughts and ideas and viewpoints and storylines and controversies, it was sitcoms and other TV shows, not the news, where now it's 24/7.
Well, we watch the news every night at my house. Every night we watched Cronkite at dinner.
Yep.
And that's who we wouldn't watch anybody else. We only watch Cronkite. And I think
my dad was a liberal, so we watched McNeil-Lehrer Report.
Okay, so on PBS.
Yeah, he's a flaming liberal, so that's what we watched.
So, yeah, but why couldn't you watch the regular news if you were a liberal?
Well, McNeil Layer was the one that like East Coast liberals would watch. It was more, well, it wasn't beholden to advertisers, and I don't know, it just seemed more liberal. PBS is considered liberal, you know. All through my childhood, everyone was like, "Oh, they're liberal."
Yeah.
That seemed like the more liberal news. I just thought it was better done. It just seemed better, more in depth.
Yeah, well, it'd be more in depth. But I didn't know that McNeil Era was actually a news program. In other words, that they just presented news, or I thought it was more of a talking head type program.
No, it was a new show.
Oh, it was? Okay. Never watched it. So I wouldn't know. The only thing I watched PBS for was for Monty Python and Benny Hill, I think. That was maybe I, Claudius. I think those are the ones.
What about Benny Hill? How would Benny Hill fare today?
Oh,
Again,
God.
not a sitcom, though. You
Well,
know?
whatever. Do we have to
I mean,
do
we
just sitcom?
brought, well, because the episode is sitcoms on trial. So, yeah, we kind of are just dealing with sitcoms, Greg.
Okay.
And so you can certainly veer off into any other territory you want, but I'm just saying. You know,
Okay.
Do we even, Matt, you have actual real television, right?
what do you mean real television?
Like, you know, like
No, my television's only in a candy box.
I live on Netflix and Amazon Prime. I don't get cable TV. I don't have a basic cable package. I have no idea what's on NBC's Power Hour on Thursday nights right now.
I don't watch network TV per se in terms of like things live. I could if I wanted to. As a matter of fact, you could if you wanted to. If you have Wi-Fi, right? You could.
I'm on Wi-Fi right now.
Right, so you could stream any of that stuff. There's a free.
If I wanted to pay for it.
Well, no, you could buy like a Roku box, right? And those run off of Wi-Fi. And the channels are free mostly on Roku. And you could get local news channels. You could get, there's a thing called Pluto TV, which has free television, live television. As a matter of fact, Roku has like free shows that you can watch too. They come with ads. So you could watch all that stuff and it wouldn't cost you anything except for the cost of like the Roku device.
We're not getting a penny from Roku, so stop talking about Roku.
You gotta understand, I love Roku.
You're advertising them.
I will give them tons of free advertising. I've used them for like 10 years. It's like my favorite. It was the way I was able to finally watch Netflix on my TV was through using the Roku box. So it's like, it's fantastic. Yeah.
This portion of the show is brought to you by Roku. Roku. Matt loves it.
Even though they're not paying us.
So my question wasn't about a Roku commercial and how I could watch TV, because I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Even if it was, they paid me to do it.
Well, there's tons of other things you could watch using it. That's my point.
All right.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah.
You'll get your nickel in the mail from Roku.
It's free.
Fine.
It's free.
So the question is, what are the sitcoms on TV now? What are people watching situation comedies now? Like, I checked out in the 90s when it was like Seinfeld, things like that.
Well, the Office was huge like about 10 years ago.
10, 15 years ago,
sitcom. Yeah. I don't know if it was around 15 years ago, but like within the last 10, The Office was like this major world event as a sitcom. You know, and it made mockumentary style television popular, because then after that you had Parks and Recreation, which is also an incredibly popular show too, and those had a lot of funny situations that happened with them, and actually some pretty funny people on those shows too. But in terms of basic sitcoms, I think How I Met Your Mother, I think
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, that one, and that was the one that kind of further catapulted Doogie Howser into our lives even more, because he was like the big character. What's that guy's name? What's the actor's name who plays Doogie Howser?
Neil Patrick Harris.
That guy, yeah, Neil Patrick Harris. So he cemented his star through that show, even more so. So he's had like a couple of minor movie roles, but he's become really big on Broadway as well. Yeah, of course, because that's what happens when you do How I Met Your Mother. One of the other
Starship Troopers.
There's the show Modern Family is the I think the big one. The big one now.
Well, you're forgetting the biggest one. Big Bang Theory. Isn't that like the biggest show the past 10 years?
I don't know, Greg, because I've seen basically one episode from all three of the ones that I've mentioned.
Yeah, they're not. Modern Family's kind of fun, but Big Bang Theory I try to watch.
I've seen an episode of I've seen a couple episodes of Big Bang Theory. I've seen at least one of How I Met Your Mother. They weren't bad.
Yeah, I mean, they're sitcoms, So it's like, I have a thing about sitcoms. I have an issue with them because essentially, that's why I say even Big Bang Theory, they're still idiots too. But in terms of like social interaction idiots, that's where most of these people are idiots. Is like they never understand that if they ask a couple of questions, they'll resolve that situation and the episode would be ended in like 2 minutes. But because of the constant misunderstandings that would go on based upon the original not asking of the question, you're able to get a 30-minute episode out of it because somebody can go, so wait a second, are you saying that you didn't actually do that thing? And they go, oh yeah, I didn't do that. And they go, okay, be done. So yeah, that's the issue that I have with sitcoms is most can be handled.
It's always been
basic
What about
communication.
Mr. Furley? What about Mr. Furley on Three's Company, where he could never figure out? That always
it
be
was
that innuendo.
It was the Ropers.
No, but then when Mr. Furley came on, he was always like in the apartment, and in the next room, Chrissy and Jack would be like trying to put something into the socket. Ram it in, Jack. I'm trying. Do it harder. And he'd be on the other side of the door, being like, whoa, what am I hearing?
That was Don Knotts' character, right?
Yeah, but it happened every episode. It was ridiculous. It was just like,
well, that brings me back to. So listen, it doesn't bring me back, but it reminds me of like the Andy Griffith Show. So that was like small town police officer raised a single parent, right? Which is kind of a novelty for the time.
Yeah,
raising a son by himself with his Aunt B, and he often people just come in and out of the jail, but there's never any black people in that town.
No, and if they were, real life Andy Griffith probably would have beat the shit out of him a lot. Because he was a Southern sheriff back in 1962.
I don't know that you can say that about all Southern people, Greg. It's not true that they're all like that.
I can't say 99.9%. I can't say that.
You're such a carpetbagger.
I am.
There are definitely Southern towns with no black people in them.
Yes, that's true.
So it's not
they
that
killed
hard
them
to
all.
believe. No, they just got enough money to get the hell out of there.
No, they lynched them all is what they did.
Okay, right. Matt, that brings up a point, though. Otis the drunk, I think, would be very problematic now. Like, making fun of an addiction, an alcoholic, that probably wouldn't fly. Like, Otis the drunk, the lovable drunk.
Yeah, because they never really took full advantage of it, like him puking on people's shoes and stuff, which they could have.
He was a lovable drunk. Never did anything unseemly. He was just like inebriated all the time.
Well, I think he messed some things up because he was drunk.
Yeah, he messed things up, but never horribly. Like he never ran over a child in his car.
But they would be the perfect police people to be looked upon favorably these days because Barney always wanted to shoot things, but he couldn't figure out how to use his gun. And generally, the sheriff wouldn't allow him to have any bullets.
A very special episode. Otis the drunk runs over a child tonight on the Andy Griffith Show.
And Barney Fife accidentally shoots.
Oh, speaking of the breakout name from that show, it was Ron Howard was the big name out of that show.
That's true.
And let me show you how old I am. I remember Ronnie Howard from before he was even in Andy Griffith Show. He was on Dennis the Menace as a real little kid. I don't know if you remember the show Dennis the Menace at all.
No.
Yeah, but and I used to watch a lot of syndicated shows growing up. When I would like hang out at my grandparents, and there'd be like nothing to watch on TV except for the stuff on the UHF channel, not the VHF channel, the UHF channel. You'd have to go through like 50 channels to finally get one that wasn't static, and then you'd finally find something you could watch for a while. My grandfather actually one of the early remote controls too. It was a box that
he was an early remote control, your grandfather?
He could be if I asked him to change the channel, but he never did. But he had a box. He had one of the early remote controls.
Oh, okay.
Which had about 15 buttons on it, and it was connected to the TV or to a box connected to the TV by a cable. And so you would push the button on the box to change the channel on the TV. It was a fascinating thing, and it's a good thing I didn't visit too often because I was always punching the buttons just to punch the buttons. Because there's something about punching buttons when you're a kid that you just kind of enjoy doing for whatever reason.
Is this going to segue into another Roku pitch somehow?
No, I had forgotten about it, but thanks for bringing up the Roku, Greg.
There's got to be a better way.
Greg, Brendan. A better way than the Roku? Well, they've
better
tried.
way than your grandfather's thing.
Well,
And Roku has
the
discovered
Roku,
it.
you can actually use your own phone to control it. So you can put the remote. There's an app for your
Wonderful.
phone
I
where
love
you
this
can
Roku. Sounds wonderful. I'm sold. You've sold me, Matt.
you can control it with your phone.
You can
Could I
get those
just
at
do a little
you can get
aside
those at
story?
Best Buy and Circuit City. Am I right? Or possibly on Amazon.com.
Does Circuit City still exist?
There was one up the road from me 6 months ago. Could be
Oh,
gone
really?
now.
Oh, okay, because we used to have one out here, but it disappeared years ago.
So I have a
Like
I have a
Radio
good
Shack
friend.
is gone too.
I have a
I
good
know
friend.
where there's a Radio Shack.
Oh, they're all gone from here. What's that, Greg?
I have a good friend who's my age, and when she was a little girl, her parents didn't have a remote.
Yes.
She was their remote.
Yes.
She would be studying upstairs, and they would just be like, "Oh, ma," and she'd have to run downstairs and turn their channel instead of them getting
Wait
off
a
the
second.
sofa.
What was that you just said?
Uma,
Ma?
her name's Uma.
Oh, I thought you were saying, oh, like, oh, mother, oh, ma.
No, they would seriously. They were so lazy. They would get like they just treat their daughter like.
I want to hear you call her name again.
Uma.
Uma.
They had heavy accents.
Uma.
They're from South India.
Uma.
They had heavy accents.
It wasn't Uma Thurman?
And Uma
Uma.
would have to run downstairs and change their channel, and she was studying. She wasn't like dicking around. They instead of them getting off the sofa and changing the channel, they'd make her interrupt anytime they wanted the channel changed. Isn't that insane?
I think we all watch TV too close to the TV so that we wouldn't have to travel too far to change the channel.
They should have. No, they probably still would have called her.
No, I'm
even if they
saying,
had
as
seen.
kids, didn't you do that? Didn't you sit close to the TV? Generally?
I had a big living room. I didn't have to. I didn't really.
Well, it's not a matter of having to. It's just like if you had a big living room, that means you were farther away from the TV, and you would have to travel farther to change the channel.
Would you lay down in front of the TV like those kids in the old pictures, like laying down with your face right up to it?
I wasn't like right up to it, but like within a couple of arms lengths.
Yeah.
We had a weird TV. Thinking back on it, we didn't get color TV till the early '80s. My dad was just unwilling. He was unwilling to upgrade the television until I think 2001 came on as a movie of the week type of thing, and then he finally decided to buy a color TV, and then we watched it in color. He's like, "This is how this should be watched." I'm like, "Yeah, couldn't we have done this years ago?" He didn't appreciate that response, though. He didn't appreciate a lot of my responses, to be honest.
I bet he didn't.
But we had this black and white TV that I grew up with until I was in my early teens when we got the color TV. And it had this button you had to push to turn it on, but it was like this strange rectangular thing that if you hit it wrong, you couldn't actually turn it on. You had to be like right on the center of it to get the turn on. And, it was like the hand cranking of the channels, too, that you had to do. And it's just that's why you just often just watch crappy shows because you just didn't feel like going through finding something else, Or you looked at the TV guide and there really wasn't anything else.
I have to give one more story because I don't think this will ever sync up with what we're talking about. When I was a little boy, I had one of those Fisher Price farmhouses, with the little Fisher Price people, and maybe it was a schoolhouse because it had a bell. And for a month in the early 70s. When I would ring that bell, it would change the channel on the TV. And it would drive my parents crazy because I couldn't resist doing it. It was like this magic. I don't know if it was like solar flares or sunspot activity. Something about the frequency of the bell.
Yeah, I got a bad case of sunspots today.
Because we had a remote that worked on some kind of vibrational thing. And when I would ring that bell, it would change the thing. And then it went away. It was like a month it worked.
That's so bizarre. That's like when I used to play Space Invaders at our local bowling alley. And at one point, something got messed up with the Space Invaders machine where if you pushed the coin return, you'd get free games. So we wound up playing a lot of free Space Invaders for a while because you just kept pushing the push the coin return and you get free games. There used to be this glitch in Donkey Kong, where if you stood on like one of the lower levels and jumped off backwards, you would automatically advance to like the next level. You could like skip over things to do that. It was interesting at the time.
Codes.
Yeah, exactly. But you died a lot before you finally figured out how to do it. I found that out the hard way as well. Anyway, but sitcoms are on trial. So Like there are sitcoms that are now on that would definitely not fly back then,
Oh, Will
like
and
Modern
Grace?
Family, for
Or
example.
just Will and Grace, any gay thing, yeah, obviously wouldn't fly, even in film, even
What
in
was
a
like the
movie.
first sitcom? I think there was that sitcom with Tony Randall where he played a gay guy. That was probably like the first
Yeah.
sitcom with a gay character in
I
it,
don't
I
think it
think.
was overt, though. I think it was implied, but they never showed him with a boyfriend or said he was gay. Wasn't that the case with
I
that
think
show?
I can't remember. It was like Dear something or other. I can't
But that
remember
might
the
be
name of
after
it.
Soap. I think Soap was the first one.
I think it was. I think, yeah, because Billy Crystal played the gay character in Soap.
Mm-hmm.
That was a
And
great show. Oh my God.
that was like a mental mess.
That was the
It
one
was
show
so
my liberal
good.
parents didn't want us to watch.
I
They never
preferred the
censored it.
more slapstick comedies to the sitcoms, I think.
Mm.
Because Soap was basically more parodying soap operas.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
just being ridiculous. It's kind of like there was some other show that was kind of similar that what was it called? Quark? You guys remember the show Quark?
Yeah, the science fiction show with Richard Benjamin.
Yeah, it was like parodying
Yeah.
like Battlestar Galactica. It was basically like a space garbage truck going through outer space.
Yeah.
And
Terrible
so,
show.
yeah, it wasn't really good.
They lasted
But
like 6 months, I think.
I like the premise.
right.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, the technology wasn't. They didn't give a lot of money to the budget for that show. But anyway, I think those are the shows that I kind of preferred because they were just out and out funny as opposed to trying to make a situation funny because people are too stupid to talk to each other.
Yeah.
They tried to make it somewhat real, but it wasn't really real because of the stupidity.
Give me an example of the difference between what you're talking about.
Well, so if you look at Happy Days, right? It's just basically kids going to school and they hang out at the local, McDonald's type shop. And then weird things kind of happen to them or
Sure.
basic problems. It's just a situation they want to be in. It's not really a slapstick show.
Like, but I guess what slapstick show are you referring to?
Oh, what was the one we were just talking about? Besides the Quark one, I've lost my memory already.
Soap.
Soap, yeah, that was a little more slapstick. It had more issues that were just designed to be parody as opposed to being real people in a situation that becomes funny.
Right.
They weren't put together as like real people, like sitcoms are supposed to be real people. If that
I
makes
think what
sense.
also illustrates this
Is
is
that-
I Love Lucy, where I Love Lucy, so many of the antics she got into is just because she was afraid to ask Ricky something. Like, oh, Ricky's bringing home the big boss. And instead of just asking him, because I'm scared, she gets into all these shenanigans, doing whatever she thinks she has to do.
Yeah,
Instead of just saying,
or she's lying to him, or he's lying to her about something, or they could just come clean and the whole thing would be fixed.
Exactly.
Like whenever she was doing the candy belt one, where the candy just kept coming and coming and coming. The way in real life you would have just stopped the machine and talked to the supervisor and said, "Hey, maybe we should slow down the machine because I'm unable to actually put these things in the boxes because it's going too fast." But instead, and this is an example of a successful situation that is actually funny at the time. Was her shoving chocolates in her shirt and in her mouth and wherever else she could put them to try and keep up, which is what made it funnier because that's a little more slapstick way to handle the situation. But it was still not a slapstick show, though. Yeah, like her ears or wherever else.
Yeah, and orifice.
And wherever else.
Sure, her nostrils, Greg. She wore them like big black eyeballs. What are you talking about? Anyway, if you want to infer something, just go ahead and state it. Don't infer it, Greg.
I like to keep this show clean.
Right. Yes, you constantly do.
I don't want to go blue.
Right. You did that in the first 5 minutes. When you were talking about Fonzie.
So can we talk about the first show
handling
that probably the first show that never should have even come out was we were talking about this the other day, is Hogan's Heroes. That was like the weirdest idea, where even when it came out, people were like, we can't do this. We can't have a comedy sitcom set in a German war camp. Not a concentration camp necessarily, but a prisoner of war camp.
Yeah.
Not a lot of good things happened in those. It wasn't very funny.
So you're suggesting...
but it was based off of a movie, right? Which had humor in the movie.
That movie was
So-
much darker than the show, though.
It was
wasn't as
darker,
good.
but there was some humorous aspects to it, is my point.
Yeah.
And so that's how I think they were able to make the concept into a
Yeah.
comedy. But yeah, it's kind of a ridiculous thing. But weren't there comedies made in prisons? Was there a sitcom that took place in a prison? Oh no, I'm thinking of something else.
Prison sitcom. No, the
No.
only
I can't think of one.
Okay,
that would
forget
be
it.
funny though.
Well, it's
Except
kind of
for
like they
Otis.
made a sitcom about doctors in the Korean War.
Yeah.
With MASH.
But that was a dramedy almost.
It was a dramedy. I wouldn't say
Not
that's
a
a
lot of pathos.
sitcom as much as there was obviously it was a funny show, but it
It was
wasn't
definitely a sitcom. It was definitely a sitcom.
Yes.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
it had lots
was.
of drama in it.
It had
Yeah.
some
Pathos.
drama, but it was kind of like they were those special episodes, I mean, you had nearly every character is like a parody of a real person, of the main characters, that is. Jamie Farr was not there for dramatic reasons. He was dressed up like a woman for a reason.
No, but I'm saying a lot of the themes you keep referring to, there's a situation that if they just ask questions, they'd get out of it. And I don't think MASH follows that formula of like Seinfeld, where if somebody would have just asked the question of the guy, they wouldn't have had these hijinks that ensued. There was an underlying story, the soldier who came in who had the problem, and then there was the hijinks between, the alcoholics and the other guy and whatever.
I think that should be the name of the show.
Alcoholics.
The Alcoholics and the Other Guy. I think that should be
Yeah.
its own
Drunks versus
sitcom.
the
What is his name? Frank Burns. And
I think it's
Atlas
kind of like
Newland.
what this podcast is. It's the Alcoholics and the Other Guy.
Oh.
I think it's just the alcoholic and the guy who drinks a little, and then the sober guy.
I thought
I'm an alcoholic. Brendan's not.
I am making a racist point of view regarding Irish people, is what I'm doing, Greg.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I don't think
Yeah.
Brendan's actually an alcoholic.
I think this is coming
He's just
back to, you're Italian, I'm Irish, and he's just lily white Protestant Jew.
Yeah.
That's
That's
right.
really that's what that comes down to.
I'm a Wazj.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am a white Anglo-Saxon Jew.
And a Navy brat on top of it.
Yeah, that's true. I am such a weird mix of cultures. It's but I think I could be easily pigeonholed in terms of European, because I don't think there's any like sub-Saharan ethnicity within me, which I'd be totally fine with, But no,
Let's think of you.
my mother's side of isn't that mighty white of me, Greg? My mother's side of the family is like I'm third generation American, and my dad's side we go back to like the Civil War. That's kind of like there are these brothers from Switzerland who migrated to Tennessee or something, and that's where my dad's family came from. My mother's family, I think her parents, her great grandparents, I think came from Ukraine and wound up migrating to England, and then her grandparents came from England to the United States.
And ladies and gentlemen, if you had a Roku, you could watch the History Channel. Tune in next time when Matt tells us more boring stories about his past family.
God, I wish I had a Roku.
I wish I could tell you stories about my future family, but I don't know them yet, Brendan, so I have to only use the ones from the past.
Oh, wordplay is such cheap humor.
That's all I've got. I've basically got a nickel for every joke. I have to pay myself to tell them. Because no one else is giving me any money.
What was the first sitcom, since we're very much on that you guys remember going, I love this show?
Huh. I mean, I watched Happy Days. I don't know if I loved the show. I mean, I was entertained by the show.
Sure.
I didn't hate the show like you did.
Well, I'm a
probably All in the Family, honestly.
Really?
I think
That's an interesting one as a kid.
Yeah, because we watched that, and we watched Sanford and Son, and we watched Good Times, and we watched Jeffersons. And they're all. I think it was because Carroll O'Connor, the guy who played Archie Bunker, was such a good actor.
Yeah.
I think that's what really made that show. Plus, was it Gene Stapleton? I think played the wife.
Yeah.
He was also a really good actor. I think they just had really good cast in that show.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's what made it really work. It's like they seem like real people, but the stuff I know. I think I was an easy laugh back then too, because he would just go Edith or Meathead, and I would just I think laugh at that. I think
Yeah.
that was my sense of humor back then. That's what made things funny to me.
I was listening to an interview with Norman Lear, the creator, and he said to this day he's still a little sad that he created Archie Bunker as this like bigoted, basically shithead, and America embraced him because Carol O'Connor was such a good actor. Like you could sympathize with Archie in a weird way. Like he was like, yeah, this guy's a product of his environment, and even though he's a total shitheel, he's always insulting people, but America really liked Archie Bunker. He was the Fonzie of that show, if you will.
I
And
think he for
He was
me,
annoyed by it.
he made me see like a microcosm of our society that I wouldn't necessarily be dealing with, but it gave me an understanding of what other people would go through. In other words, what really kind of made that show was how people reacted to his bigotry, and how they dealt with it. And they dealt with it a very direct way generally. They would address it head on, and it was good to have the guy who was the black bigot on the show, which was Jefferson, because
Yeah.
he hated white people as much as Bunker hated black people, right? And they would kind of go head to head, and yet you could see that it was explained that they were neighbors, and they could actually get along, kind of. And there was like this begrudging respect that they had for each other,
Yeah.
because I think they both respected each other's hate, is what I think
Yeah.
made that work. But at the same time, you had like the liberal son-in-law and liberal daughter who would also attack him for his points of view. And I think that was actually, I think, a very turning point for me growing up, is that gave me these alternative points of view to how some people view things. I mean, I was fortunate. I didn't have bigotry in my home. My dad could have been. My grandmother on my dad's side absolutely was a racist, like as racist as they come. And I didn't know until much later in life. I didn't know until I was in college that she was like that. And so it was like my dad
How
was
racist
never
was
like
she?
that. She was so racist that she was thumbs up for lynching. So,
Really?
oh yeah,
No kidding.
oh yeah,
Well, she would. Your grandmother. So God,
Yeah.
she would have been what? Born in the
early 1900s. Yeah,
early 1900s. Yeah. So okay.
I'd say I think at the latest she would have been born in like 1920 maybe, but I'm pretty sure she was born much before then, because
And what part
my dad was born in 38. So
So what
If she-
part of
if
the
she-
country?
oh, this is like the hills of Tennessee.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was lynching time for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I visited her in college, and we were listening to the radio, and Jesse Jackson was like giving a speech or something. She's like, we didn't see any of them around here anymore since they, strung up the last one outside of town all those years ago.
Oh man.
And my jaw kind of dropped, and I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I had no idea I was related to that.
Was
You
she
know,
at the
and-
first
and-
Lynchapalooza?
And that's the weird thing about it. Is like, so my mother's definitely a full-blown Jew, right? And so Jewish American princess all the way. And that's who my dad married. And so I can only imagine what it would have been like at the wedding. All I know is that I heard for years one grandmother talking smack about the other grandmother. They would both do it about each other. And I'm like,
Makes sense.
but I later kind of found out that my mother's mother was a little bit racist too. So there is a term for black people in Yiddish called schwarze, which basically just means black, right? But it's used in kind of a derogatory tone when they use it. And I didn't know this till college also about my grandparents on my mother's side. And I'm like, well, they could have had something they could have bonded over.
Like Archie Bunker and George Jefferson.
Which doesn't make any sense to me
Yeah.
because, Jews are so persecuted by those same people that they shouldn't be persecuting anybody of any
Oh,
ethnicity.
that's so naive, Matt.
It's not a naive
My Italian
thing, Greg.
relatives
Greg,
are
it's
the
not a
most
naive
racist.
thing. It's a desire.
It is.
It's
yes,
not
you're right. It's,
naivete. I understand.
sad.
I know how the world works, Greg. I do
yeah.
a podcast with you. I know how it works.
You know,
You,
drunks.
you know how the world works because you do a podcast with Greg?
Yes, I know about
I've-
people
I've
like
enlightened
him.
him. I've enlightened Matt over the months.
Wow.
My
Amazing.
Italian relatives were the most racist people. Oh my God, they were the most blatant racist. They would say things like, "Oh, they come over here and take our jobs," and it's like, your father came over here and took some jobs from Italy. They were saying that about him.
Yeah, isn't that what Gangs of New York was all about? It's like there was the Americans who were like taking out the Irish gangs and anybody else that
pretty much,
weren't born here.
Yeah, non-Americans,
Yeah.
non-born Americans.
The nativists.
Right. Or I forget what the gang was called in that movie. But anyway,
the Dead Rabbits.
Dead Rabbits was the Irish gang, I think.
Yeah.
No, they were called the Sweat Hogs.
They were the Sweat Hogs.
It went from Dead Rabbits to Sweat Hogs. They went up in the world.
They were Mickey McLucky Charms. That's what they were.
Well, the Sweat Hogs were definitely a mix of ethnicities, though, because you had an Italian, you had an African American, you had a Hispanic guy, and then a guy. Then you had the guy who was Polish. No, I don't think there was that many Italians. It was like
was Horshack Jewish?
I was Polish. I don't know if he was
Polish.
Jewish. No, Kaplan was Jewish. Cotter was Jewish.
Yeah,
Cotter's Jews.
Yeah.
There was the black guy, and then 2 Italians.
I don't even remember who the other 2 Italians were besides
wasn't there
Barbarino.
Epstein was very Hispanic.
Epstein was half Jew, half Hispanic.
You're right. He was Hispanic.
I was just remembering names. There was one guy I remember, and I kind of dubbed in he was Italian, but now I remember his name was Epstein.
Oh,
so
Epsteino.
Not an Italian name, no.
Yeah, Epsteino, I think is his name.
By the way, this
Italian
is
and Jewish.
Did you guys have a crush on his wife? She was so hot. That smarty pants wife of his with her glasses.
I remember she was cute.
Oh, I loved her.
She kind of reminded me of
she was sexy.
Bailey Quarters in WKRP in Cincinnati.
Yes, very much. Good call. Yeah. Like the girl you actually want to date, not just.
And now let's talk about WKRP in Cincinnati for a second. So
that was a good one.
There was one very, very controversial episode in that particular show, just when they dropped the turkeys out of the helicopter.
Was that controversial? I just thought it was funny.
Well, it was controversial for people in PETA.
In Cincinnati.
No, I'm talking about people for the ethical treatment of animals were like, this is something that would not fly now because you could not torture turkeys in that way. You know,
but they really didn't drop turkeys out of a...
I mean, they could have.
They didn't do it.
They could have done it. It's just the whole concept. You know, I don't want to give anybody...
They were making light of it, Brendan. They were making light of this turkey genocide.
They don't want to give anybody ideas.
Yeah.
Yes, turkey genocide.
I might do it.
He thought they could fly. Swear to God, he thought they could.
You know, and that was like bigoted towards guys who wore plaid, that particular show. Because they made the guy who wore plaid all the time, you know, the biggest jerk. I think it was Herb.
Herb, yes.
Herb Tarlick.
Guy.
Herb Tarlick, that was the name, yes.
And he was a sexist fuck. He was a complete reprobate shit male.
Yeah, right. And then they had Lonnie Anderson as the sex pot secretary.
Yeah, do you think her blonde bimbo character would fly today? Do you think people would be like, "Hey, come on, she's a blonde bimbo. This is like."
Do they no longer have blonde bimbo characters on shows?
I don't know. I don't watch.
One.
Not the bucks. They don't have the buxom ones anymore. I don't think.
Certainly not some blonde and buxom blonde going around acting stupid and everybody leering at her and she doesn't get it.
I think they save that for movies. They keep that in the movies. They don't put it on TV.
Yeah,
I don't think they put it on TV. So Greg, what was your TV show? Was it Happy Days?
No, God, every show. I was. I didn't.
He loved them all.
Either. I swear to God, like. I don't remember really liking them. I was a complete idiot. I was completely addicted. I watched the Brady Bunch every day. Never laughed at it. I don't know why I kept watching it. I watched Happy Days.
Oh, I can tell you why. Marcia. That's why you watched it.
Yeah, she was pretty cute. But there was cuter. Like I liked other women on other sitcoms more if I was just going to watch for that reason. If you know what I'm saying.
I think you watch Brady Bunch because it's more relatable to you as a child because there's a lot of children on that show.
But I'd watch them 3 times. By the time I graduated high school, I'd probably seen every episode 3 or 4 times, and they were terrible the first time. I watched everything. I think the first sitcom with maybe some critical faculties in my head that I was like, this is actually pretty good. It might be Soap, where I was like, I mean, we're doing sitcoms, right? So Saturday Night Live really blew me when SCTV when I was a kid. But
Right.
sitcoms, I think Soap was the first time I was like, this isn't just insipid, stupid shit. Even though it might have been a little stupid, I haven't seen it since. But it seemed a little smarter or like more satirical, and I don't know.
Definitely was smarter.
I kind of stayed away from it just because it had to do with soap operas, and I didn't really want to be associated with soap operas in my mind. You know, so
Really?
I knew of the characters, and I knew later on in life I went and watched a couple of the episodes, and actually, you know, later on in life I found it just a little boring, actually, because they're like soap operas.
Yeah, I think that
yeah.
show would be not that fly well today because Billy Crystal's character, even though it was the first gay character on sitcoms, he is shown as the most mincing stereotype of a gay man. You know, like he's got that voice. He's so mincing and like, oh, Mary, you know, he's kind of that, you know. I wonder if today gay people would be like,
I think
hey,
Billy
come on.
Crystal is a walking racist stereotype of voices. Because
He used to do a great black man voice. He used to do
he used to. Well, I mean, he used to do blackface, for crying out loud. He used to wear blackface to be Sammy Davis Jr. And then there was that whole skit that he did on Saturday Night Live with Christopher Guest, where they played these two
blackface. I forgot.
They did these. They're these two blackface baseball players that were retired. You know, that they did for Saturday Night Live. They totally did blackface back in the day. You know, and it was accepted. And this was in the 80s. You know, blackface was accepted in the 80s, and now it's definitely a good way to like lose a political career. Although,
or an acting career.
Well, you know, my light suddenly decided to get really bright for some reason.
And now Matt is illuminated.
And now I have received an epiphany from God. I don't know why that happens every once in a while. It just decides to go bright on me. I don't know why.
God is telling you, why are you wasting your time doing this podcast, Matt? Feed the poor. What are you doing with your time?
The poor can feed themselves if people give them food. But anyway, getting back to, I can't even remember what I was talking about. I got so distracted by getting blinded.
We're talking about Billy Crystal and blackface.
Oh yeah, and doing blackface. So what was it? The current Prime Minister or President of Canada,
Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, did blackface in college.
Yeah.
And then there was the governor of Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Who was found to have done it too. And neither one of them resigned. So I guess it's not a full shot in the head for doing blackface. But I think anybody after that who's closer to this current generation would probably be shooting themselves in the foot politically if they did blackface at some point. Did you guys ever do blackface at any time?
I did.
Did you? You one time just put shoe polish all over your face?
But it was, I was a kid. It was, I want to say it was the early 80s. And for Halloween, they had these inflatable, you know, you had the smock like we all had, but then they had these heads that you put on the top of your head and you blew them up. And mine was a bat. It was a blow-up bat I had on my head, and so I painted my face black.
I was going to say, you didn't do blackface, you did bat face.
It was bat face, but, you know, if somebody took a picture of
bat
me.
face.
Where's blackface?
It's black bat face.
Yeah.
Black bat face.
That's the worst. Because you're pissing off a whole other species as well as pissing off black people.
As well as just cave dwellers.
I'm an insensitive prick. That's what I am.
To bats, blacks, and cave dwellers.
I gotta say, this might be controversial, but in 1980, if you were saying, hey, I'm going for Halloween, I'm going to be Michael Jackson, I don't think it means you have hate in your heart because I want to make it authentic. I'm going to make myself look like, oh, I'm sorry, Michael Jackson's a bad example because he was getting white then. A real black person.
A real black person.
I'm going to go as Denzel Washington.
Yes, I'm going to go for Halloween. I'm going as Denzel Washington. And I know that, yes, there's this.
You're making a horrible example here, Greg. I don't know where you're going with this.
If you know your history, there is this like strain of cultural insensitivity about blackface.
Sure.
Shows.
You don't have to know your history. You can just read the news in the last 10 years.
I know, but back then, when it was okay, it wasn't like everyone at the party was going to be like, how dare you? It's just like, hey, I'm just doing an authentic costume. Sorry, it doesn't mean I'm
Not
racist and I hate black
really.
people.
No, I mean, I think, ever since the days of Al Jolson, things later became, it is kind of an insensitive thing to do, because it does harken back to the minstrel shows. It's insensitive, or it's just the person's stupid because they didn't know any better. And that, I think, would be the two reasons to do blackface. Or the third reason, which is you just don't care.
Yeah.
You're not insensitive.
I'm just
you're
saying,
just
I doubt that person is this like
racist.
virulent racist just because he was like, I'm going to do a really authentic Halloween costume. I'm going to look just like Sam Cooke or someone. So he's going to go all out.
You're
I don't
picking
think
with all
he's
these
like
like
saying, "Fuck
people
you."
who are nobody actually dresses up like, Greg.
I know. I don't know why. I can't think of a better Mr. T.
Everyone
Mr.
goes
T
around
did
dressing up
Halloween.
like Sam Cooke.
Wouldn't Mr. T might have been a good Halloween costume in 1982.
Okay, that would be a little more, I think,
Funner.
carry something for Halloween that would make more sense.
Yeah, Mr. T.
Because I remember Mr. T and Mr. and Mrs. T Bloody Mary mix from Saturday Night Live when Eddie Murphy was on. And it was Mr. T and a woman who dressed like Mr. T but didn't have blackface, but she had a mohawk and chains. And they both were yelling at the camera together, like, you have to buy this Bloody Mary mix. It was on Saturday Night Live.
I never saw that one.
It was the non-Lorne Michaels era of Saturday Night Live. It's the era when Eddie Murphy and Joe Piscopo were the two big names of Saturday Night Live.
I was watching all those.
So it was what was her name? Robin Duke was the name of the act.
I liked Robin Duke.
the
She's
actress.
from SCTV.
She's a friend of everything.
She's an SCTV person. Second City television.
I didn't know she was from that particular genre.
Yeah.
All right, so we've done a
fully
thorough investigation into
That's
sitcoms.
wrapping this up in case you weren't paying attention, Greg. Time to wrap this up. We beat this blackface thing to death. I don't know where that even came from.
It came from the minstrel shows, Brendan.
Right, which is a sitcom, right?
Yeah. Minstrel show is like airing on NBC next year.
Yeah.
It's going to fly really well.
There's actually a movie about that. It's called Bamboozled by Spike Lee. He made a movie about this.
Yes, he did, but that's not what I'm talking about.
Where Mystery comes back.
That's right. It's like if you want to make a real good sitcom right now, take that era of our history and turn that into a comedy. See how good of a writer you are there.
What about a sitcom about a KKK group who are just a zany bunch of nutballs?
I just got through watching this movie about this guy, John Callahan, who's a cartoonist for the Willamette Week.
I love that guy.
And it was with Joaquin Phoenix and Jonah Hill. And this came out like 2 years ago. It was Gus Van Sant movie. And he had this cartoon that he did where it was like two KKK members walking down the street and they were talking to each other. And one of them said, I always love that feeling when the sheets come right out of the dryer.
Good one.
So you kind of reminded me of that, Greg, with your statement, like in terms of making that into a sitcom, right? But it would be like more wacky hijinks between the two KKK members.
Yeah.
But that sounds like something out of like Kentucky Fried Movie. Where they would do something like that, or there was like a sequel to Kentucky Fried Movie.
One of the KKK guys is actually black.
That's a different movie. That's called Black. That's called Black Klansman.
Black Klansman.
Oh, I haven't seen it. Oh.
You should watch that one. You might find that one fascinating. It's based on a true story.
Yeah, but it's not a sitcom. It's a drama, right?
Yeah. It's definitely
based
not
on a true story.
Definitely not a comedy.
I was going to say, based on a true story, it's not a funny movie. I'm saying
there probably are
funny.
some funny moments to it, I would think, though.
I say it's funny because the black Klansman doesn't actually know he's black, but his white
that's
Klansman.
The Dave Chappelle thing.
That's a Dave
right.
Chappelle.
Yeah.
Do the whole show like that.
Chappelle would go for it. There was some. Chappelle recently did the speech or the monologue on Saturday Night Live, like right after the election. He was dropping the N-word all over the place on Saturday Night Live.
Oh yeah, he was smoking a cigarette on the stage.
He was. He had an ashtray right next to him. He was definitely smoking.
Oh yeah.
He was cracking up. I'm like, oh yeah, just do it. Take those fines. I guess there probably wasn't much of an audience there as so much. Like the band was like separated by plexiglass in some cases. So obviously they're trying to COVID up the Saturday Night Live audience area. Anyway, so I think we should wrap up the sitcoms on trial. So who won or who lost? Did the American public lose because of some of these horrible
definitely.
sitcoms?
Yeah, I wasted so many hours of my childhood watching insipid shit.
Would you say the television really is the boob tube, and that it has no real value for humanity because of sitcoms?
Boobs are good. I like boobs.
Yeah, but it turns people into
boobs.
It turned people into boobs.
It was an elbow tube. It was
an elbow tube.
Like watching an elbow. It was just insipid nonsense. I think sitcoms are way better now. Like all the sitcoms you mentioned that are popular now, they're much more clever than anything we got to watch as kids. Except for Sanford and Son was just great because Red Fox is fucking hilarious. But really, the script writing wasn't, stellar. It was, but everything's gotten better, I think, in TV. But yeah, I just grew up watching so much shit, and I think I want to put them in the electric chair with sitcoms.
I think what's changed with sitcoms now is essentially language and sexuality are no longer the pariah aspects of a show. Right, they're no longer taboo. They're the things that are more acceptable. But if you're dealing with like racism or sexism, those are less acceptable. So it's kind of flipped in that regard. Whereas before, sexism, racism used to be more acceptable. But if you talked about sex, and if you talked about like using bad language, you couldn't use that on TV. So those have definitely changed. So that's
like racist sex. Like sex done just for racist purposes.
I think that was the movie Monsters Ball.
Oh, was that one? Okay.
Yeah, I think that was the one with racist sex. That was what Halle Berry and Billy Bob Thornton. Right. Yes.
He has all kinds of hate sex. That guy.
I think so.
That's all he's ever had.
Yeah.
He never had loving sex.
No.
All right. Well, on that note, so the American public lost as well as the rest of the world because we all got sucked into really bad comedy, and we were made to pretend that it was actually funny. And we didn't really learn anything except fake social interactions that aren't real. And that's why we're all doing meth today. So on that note, Brendan, would you like to close things out with some type of pithy or profound commentary about Greg's facial hair or something else?
I have a soul patch.
I think Greg needs to dye it. I think Greg needs to dye his soul patch jet black.
This has been the law offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker Computer Telecast, where any advice has been designed purely for amusement and deep-sea diving. Please take a candy on your way out, pet the lion tamer, and subscribe to this computer telecast if you know it's good for you. The law offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker deny all culpability in today's events and are not to be confused with real law offices that have a secretary and books and stuff. Thank you all. Have a good day.